I'm very glad to welcome you here today to this meeting that we have we have organized this meeting with the IAHR, that's the International Association of Hydro Engineers and Researchers, and the Young Professional Network of chapters based in Scandinavia and in Poland, and with the help of Ariana Farani and Adina Moraru. We have two speakers on the topic of learning to set boundaries and develop resilience. The first of these speakers is Dr. Inês Crisóstomo from the University of Luxembourg, who has over a decade of experience in science management and scientific training. Dr. Crisóstomo leads a mentoring program for researchers at the University of Luxembourg, and her expertise spans international and multicultural academic environments where she empowers individuals to solve problems, manage projects, and most importantly, enhance their personal and professional well-being. She is a biologist and graduated from the University of Lisbon, and has a PhD from the Universidade Nova de Lisboa, and conducted research at the Rockefeller University in New York. So please, Inês, please share your screen, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much, Brian. It was a very complete introduction. Let's see if this works now. Okay. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So as Brian said, I come from a research background. I was a scientist at some point in my career. Then life brought me to consultancy or science management, and I'm now also trained as a coach, but that is the topic for another talk. Today I'm here to talk about boundaries and how they can help us develop resilience. But first, I would like to hear from you to make sure that we are aligned in what I'm going to tell you. So I would ask you to go to Mentimeter. I'm sure you all know Mentimeter by now after so many years of Zoom and pandemic and all of that. Enter that code and tell me, why did you come in today? I just have to make sure that I don't lose my view. Did you manage to go in? No?
It's not working for me.
What about now?
No.
Ah, sorry, the code is wrong. Ah, I'm so sorry. Wait. Okay, so the code should be, where is the chat? If someone could write in the chat 755 7. How do I do this? What did I get this wrong?
I'm writing 7557.
8112.
8112. Now everyone should have it.
It works.
Sorry about that. Are you seeing now my Mentimeter window, or did I do this wrong?
Not yet.
Now?
Only the slide with the QR code.
Okay, so I need to share again.
Yes.
Very well. Thank you so much. I'm just trying to scroll because I don't know that I can put this smaller. I thought it would have done a word cloud, but maybe I chose wrong. I'm not so good with Mentimeter. This is a skill that I still have to develop. Yes, but I see a lot of things like personal interest on the topic, learn more practical things, knowing well-being, setting boundaries, interest in resilience, saying no. Well, I hope I'm going to touch on all of this, but please feel free to use the chat. And yeah, I thought I'm sharing the screen, but apparently I'm not sharing the screen. I'm just sharing the window, which means that every time I have to go to Mentimeter, it goes away. Can you now see it, the slides?
No. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So what are boundaries? This is about setting boundaries. I always like to start with definitions because often English is not our mother tongue for most of us. So going back to the definitions and just making sure that we're talking about the same thing helps. So boundaries are really about limits. It can be a limit of a country, a thing, or a subject, but it also can be a limit of what someone considers to be acceptable behavior. And this is more where we're going to focus on today. We often say the sky is the limit, and that's a good thing, in my opinion, right? We should aim high. We should aim to aspire to the best of ourselves and to aspire to get the best possible thing. So yes, the sky is the limit. But where are then the boundaries? Where do we set them? Can I say that this is your boundary? I don't think I can. Because the thing is, we are all different. And so what is a boundary to me is not a boundary to Brian or to Ariana or to Adina or may or may not be. I don't know. We all have a personality, a culture that comes with values and morals, a social context, past experiences that are going to shape where we put the boundary. Also, we may have different boundaries depending on the situation. You probably don't behave in the same way if you're in a work meeting or if you're out at night with your friends, right? The situation will also create different boundaries. So all of this, you have to kind of be aware where you are, what you want. And for me, this is really the key point, self-awareness. Many, many things that I believe are very important for our personal development and for well-being start with self-awareness, being aware of where you are, what you want, and what do you need. I came across when I was preparing to do this presentation, to this nice article on the Harvard Business magazine that reflects on how to be internal self-awareness, so how we see ourselves, and how others see us. So this external self-awareness or external awareness, this is not so much of a self. And how others see us, it's also very, very important because we might be projecting something that we don't see ourselves. So it's important to ask. I remember I was once very surprised when I was still at the university that someone came across and said that I looked arrogant or I sounded arrogant. And I was like shocked because I, at the time, had a very, very, very self-confidence. And how come a person would come to me and say that it had never crossed my mind. So I started to think about, okay, what did I do for that person to have that opinion? And I cannot say that she's wrong, right? Because that was what she perceived of me. So that's not a right or wrong. It's just a perception. And the key thing is to ask what and not why. So in terms of being aware, it's not about why am I feeling like this or what did I do that person has that impression. So, and this notion of what is also a very good question when we talk about, for example, coaching or mentoring, because we should always try to ask open questions and not closed questions. And a why asks for a justification, a what focus more on the behavior of the person. And this is much more important to focus on what you can do. So what? What person am I? What person do I want to be? What do I need? What is important for me? This is the question that you should be asking yourself when you try to think about where are your boundaries. And if possible, get feedback. Get feedback from people you trust. You should not get feedback from people who would also not get advice. So these people have to be people that you have a trust, that you feel that you can come to them. They can be a friend, but a friend that is going to be honest. But often work people, colleagues, people that you work well, you can ask them. And not related to boundaries, but a very good question to ask also, which I could talk about, which is, what is your superpower? We all have a superpower. So this you can also ask others, what do they think your superpower is? But ask these what questions. What is in it? How do others see you? What do you do? And what do you want to be? Then there's also different kinds of boundaries, as I said, and people or experts tend to separate them into hard boundaries or soft boundaries. And when I think about hard or soft, hard boundaries are more to do with my priorities, my values. For example, honesty is is very important for me. So anything that is unethical for me would be a hard boundary. I would not cross that line. If you talk about if I would cross the line when maybe I'm crossing the street without and the light is red, sometimes I do it. I'm not going to say that I don't do it. So sometimes I do it. Again, depends on the situation. But I have to tell you, if I'm with my small kids, I will not cross the street if the sign is red, because I'm in that situation, I'm being a role model. And then you can also think about soft boundaries, which is more related to aspirations, things that you want to be. So for example, if I will pick exercise just because it's something that everybody can more or less relate to. If you want to be fitter, if you want to start doing more exercise, a boundary could be every day I'm going to go to the gym for 1 hour and I will find the time to do this. Of course, this is a soft boundary. Maybe something else comes up and you don't fulfill it completely and you don't fulfill your boundary and you do something else. But there is this difference about things that are really priority to you and that connect to who you are, and the boundaries that connect to the improvement steps. Does that make sense? It's very weird to be on a webinar not really seeing all your faces. So yeah, I like that Adriana and Adina are nodding, and John also. It helps to keep the engagement going. So there's very many different types of boundaries, and some of them I don't think are within this webinar. But for the workplace, which I think is more, most of us are coming to this topic, a big boundary is often a time, an emotional boundary, and a conversational boundary. And again, I don't know what these boundaries are for you. You have to think about it. But there are some examples up here, and I'm going to give you then some examples a little bit further for my own. And I said this, so setting boundaries in the workplace is about who you are and where you are, and also where you want to go, and about establishing a reputation. So once you start working in a certain place or with a certain group of people, it's really important to think about, how do you want to be perceived? What is the footstep that you would like to leave? How would you like people to see you? And if you don't know where your boundaries are, then you're going to be kind of pushed and you're going to go with the flow, but you're not really going to define who you will be and how will others see you, if that makes sense. So once you know what your boundaries are, the key thing is to communicate it to others. I just realized there's a slide that disappeared. Okay. So maybe before going to the communication, I'm just going to stay here for a little bit longer. And I said, I mentioned already that honesty is a big boundary for me. Another word is autonomy. So if I'm in a job where I don't feel that I have the autonomy or the independence that I need to work, I would often found that as a boundary, and I would try to negotiate to have that autonomy or think about leaving. Again, if you think about leaving a job, because you always have the choice, right? You can always just try to change things or let them go. Sometimes other boundaries come into play, like material boundaries. So do I need to get the paycheck at the end of the month? Which one is more important? So it comes to priorities also. And this is why I go back to my little hiker, and whatever you have on your backpack is what makes your own context and what makes how you can set your priorities and your boundaries. And I'm going now to switch gears a little bit, because as I was talking to Ariana, Nadine, and Brian before we started this webinar, I think most of you know where your limits are. The most difficult thing often is to communicate your limits to other people, especially if it's a supervisor. And this is what I've seen immensely in my experience dealing with PhDs and postdocs and their relationship with supervisors. Often things are not communicated in a way that it's clear and that everybody's on the same page. I like to think about this expression that it takes two to tango, right? If you think about ballroom dancing, you have someone who's leading the dance, but that person can lead whatever they want. If the other one doesn't follow or doesn't respect the timing, they are not going to do a very beautiful dance, right? So it still takes two. And if you're talking and you're just talking in a way that it doesn't make sense to the other person, then they won't really listen, and they will also they will not understand. So it really takes very good communication skills and being able to communicate to others what are your limits. The key thing is to be clear and precise and as straightforward as possible. So don't go around. Think about what is the message that you want to pass and stay clear and to your message. State also very clearly what do you need or what are you requesting from the other person? What do you need the other person to understand? And focus on positive things, rather what you want or what you like and not what you don't like. Because if you say, well, I don't like that we always go have this team building events on Tuesdays, then maybe the person would set them for Wednesdays. And actually what you wanted to say is that you didn't want them to be in the afternoon and you wanted it to be in the morning. And then also explain why is it important to you. So if I stick to this thing, I don't want to have the team meetings on Tuesdays. It's because on Tuesdays, I actually had planned to only work in the morning and I'm not supposed to be working in the afternoon. But when the team meeting is always scheduled for Tuesday afternoon, I feel that I need to be here to work. I mean, something like that. And discuss expectations. Discuss what you expect from people and what people should expect from you. Often the conversation with supervisors, and I'm going to use the term supervisors here because I do find this is a research-oriented webinar. Discussions are very focused on the research project around what's going well, what's going wrong, but not so much on the relationship and how you're working together. What is working well? What is not working well? How can we work better together? For me, a good comparison is a roommate. If you move in with someone, you need to set up boundaries, rules. Who's going to clean the bathroom? Who's going to do the shopping? Are we going to share the food or each one is going to buy their own food? These things need to be talked. They won't just happen by magic, or maybe sometimes they will happen by magic, but in most cases they don't. Now, I'm saying, and this looks really easy, but I totally understand that it's not easy at all, but it is important. It is really important to talk. And even if you're anxious about talking, anxiety is just a way of showing you that you need to prepare to do something. It doesn't mean that you should just avoid it. You just prepare to do it because it is important. Because think with me, what happens if you do not communicate your boundaries? What's the result of that? Poor communication is a conflict in the making. Avoiding conflict will not resolve the situation. The situation will just stay there and most likely has the risk of turning it in, having a snowball effect. You need to also understand and acknowledge your role in a conflict. And I'm now using the word conflict, but you can just say disagreement. And often the conflicts will not completely go away. Because if you work with someone and you have very different views on something, the conflict will probably always be there. Like one person thinks that you should be working 70 hours a week and you don't think that you should be working 70 hours a week. And maybe that conflict will never go away, but you need to manage. You need to talk about it, manage, and find a way that you can work together. I came also across the term conflict engagement. So you are engaged in a conflict, you know you disagree about something, but you still have to work together. And how you can solve this is really through communication. I find the notion of people are okay, which comes from transactional analysis, a really, really good one. So for me, when I came across this concept, it changed how I communicate to people. So what this concept says is that everyone is okay. I'm okay, you are okay. And to have effective conversations, you need to be in this quadrant where you feel that the other person is okay. What you should be criticizing, if there is things to criticize or to discuss, are behaviors, right? You can do something that I didn't think it was good, and we can talk about it, but that doesn't mean you're a bad person. It's not black and white. One behavior doesn't say who you are. So you should be very aware of how you kind of look at people and make sure that you discuss what needs to be discussed, but you don't think the person is good or bad. Also very important in assertive communication is to express your emotions. You can say that you're angry. You can say that you're frustrated. You can say that you are tired or sad or whatever. What you cannot do is act on your emotions, right? You can be frustrated, but you don't kick the door. You can be angry, but you don't yell. It's about just expressing it without acting upon them. And I want to really focus on the question of perceptions, because we are in multicultural environments. People come from very different places. I don't know if you've seen this image before, and I don't know what you see first. I first saw an old lady, but you can also see a young lady with a hat. And it really depends on how you look at the image. And it's still the same image, right? The same thing if maybe this image you came across already about the different perspectives. And what I like about this cartoon that I stole somewhere from Google is that they cut like this is a circle or this is a rectangle, but they go and use I language. I see a circle and you see a rectangle. I'm not wrong, you're not wrong, we're just coming from different perspectives. And this is extremely important, to be able to articulate things in a way that you talk from your own perspective and you ask for the other person's perspective as well. And ideally, you find a common ground, because supervisors are not bad people. They used to be PhDs and postdocs and they just got there and they're also struggling. They also have their own battles. And this us versus them, which I come across so often, is just not helpful for anyone. You often have a common ground. If it's your research project that you're doing together, you both want it to be successful. So find your common ground, start there or go there and find how you can work together so that you are successful on your common project. And as I said, discuss expectations. Another term that comes across to describe the world and research is VUCA, this vulnerability, uncertainty, ambiguity, and complexity. I mean, I think we can all accept that the world of research is uncertain and complex, and it's just, there's a lot of talks about it. But ambiguity and vulnerability, I think we as individuals can work on. We should avoid ambiguity, and I think all the slides that I put on before were really about seeking clarity and making sure that things are clear and we are on the same page. And understanding that vulnerability is actually not a bad thing. And showing vulnerability is just a sign of courage. And we have to sometimes be vulnerable to overcome and learn. And this brings me to resilience, because resilience is then the ability to, to be honest, I like this meaning when it comes to a substance and not a person, which is the ability of a substance to return to its usual shape. And I think just the visual of this, like when you kind of squeeze something and then it pops up, it for me, it's a very good visual for resilience. So how do you get there? Well,
if I
personally,
might interrupt you, Inês,
sure.
I think we have kind of very short time for you. If we want to have small discussion and then Joanne.
Okay, then I will move forward.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry for that.
No, thank you for that. For me, it's really about connecting with others. And so I get a lot of support and a lot of inspiration and a lot of energy from connecting with others. And also just thinking back to moments where I had setbacks and I overcome them. So how can you culture resilience? How can you become more resilient? I think what I would advise is to know why you're doing something, to have a sense of purpose, and then to believe you can do it. And I believe you can all do it. I'm a true believer that everyone holds the potential to overcome any difficulty that comes their way. It's not easy, but you can do it. What I don't think it's useful, and I see it many times, many more that I would like to, is to have this cycle of there's a problem, people complain, blame others, and negative emotions come to it, and the problem doesn't get solved. So really try to identify a problem, come up with options, and take action. Maybe the action is to move and go somewhere else because that's not the environment for you, right? But I also like to think about the serenity prayer. So give me the serenity to understand what I can control and what I cannot control and know the difference, right? I think this is the wisdom to know the difference. And most importantly, and I can stop here, is to have a growth mindset, to really think about taking a learning perspective. We can always do better. And these are my personal ingredients and things that I do every day. And I'm not a perfect person, and I always try to do better. And I can share the slides then if you want. And these are the books and voices that inspired this talk. So thank you very much.